Today through February 11th, France is hosting the Artificial Intelligence Action Summit, which gathers heads of state, international organizations, CEOs and tech giants, and artists, all coming together to envision the future of AI. This will also include Vice President J.D. Vance. This will be J.D. Vance's first trip abroad as vice president. This also comes as an international report compiled by leading researcher Yoshua Bengio warns that the world is losing control over AI, and the results could be devastating, from misinformation to using AI as a massive weapon for destabilization in the form of accelerated cyber attacks or even biological attacks. Now, I've long argued that dominion over AI isn't as important as who has control over nuclear technology, but if the prescription is more government intervention, haven't we seen this movie before? How can Vance's presence, fully representing an America First agenda, steer this conversation in a proper America First perspective? Joining us now is Hedgehog founder and CEO of Hedgehog, former CEO of Parler, John Mates. John, what should we expect to see from this summit?
What's really, truly unique and nice about Vance being at this summit is that he has that tech background. He's very well connected in the tech space in the United States. You can consider him one of the tech bros, right? So when he goes there, it's actually impactful. It means more than just a traditional vice president visit. And so now that we have China trying to compete with AI in a really aggressive level with this new DeepSeek program they came out with, and the Chinese government backing it, and its supposed increase in efficiency over some of the US technologies, he needs to go out there and set an example of, hey, the US is going to be an industry leader on this. We have to compete with our Western values and our Western ideas against this AI that can't seem to figure out that the Tiananmen Square events occurred, so this highly censored and controlled AI. We have to be competitive in this space.
That said, DeepSeek has some massive, advantages over some of the U.S. models. What are those advantages, at least in the tech space? Like, what are you guys talking about when it comes to why DeepSeek is such a revolutionary entrant?
In theory, it's more efficient. So that's what they're trying to claim, that it's performing better than some of the US AIs. They're using artificial intelligence to train their artificial intelligence with more, efficiency. So that's the concept and the theory. I don't actually know, I haven't verified that any of that is actually true, but let's assume it is true. It's just more reason why we can't have government overreach into this space. If our government comes in and creates all these rules and regulations and strict standards, we can't compete with China. They are not going to have any of those rules or standards. It's going to be the Wild West out there.
Right.
So it's not to say that we should act recklessly and dangerously, but we got to find some sort of middle ground where we don't overburden our innovators and our free market with all sorts of legislation that stops us from competing with China and with the rest of the world, while also somehow giving us an edge up, which we do have in some respects as well.
We've had these conversations before, and I agree with you, because the problem is when you start with the solution that conservatives seem to be having, and I feel like I'm at odds with conservatives on this issue, but the solution seems to be burying their heads in the sand and saying, like, oh no, this is bad technology, we can't have it. Let's just block it. Use laws to block it. And that seems very short-sighted, given we live in an age of information that is pretty globally accessible. It does put us at a competitive disadvantage to our core adversaries like China.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can't bury our heads in the sand, and we can't over-legislate this space. I have an unique, perspective on this. And I don't mean to completely change topics, but if we take a look at what's going on with Doge, right, they're trying to cut costs a little bit here and there, and they're making some minor impacts, but we need to make a major impact on that space. And so if we take a look at AI and innovation and the need for investment, and then we also take a look at our US government's need to not only cut waste, but in my opinion, change the paradigm so that we can actually generate wealth for the country rather than the government just being a taxing burden on the free market. The idea of a sovereign wealth fund or investing more in AI and then the US government being able to profit as a result of that doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. It could be a partial solution to this too.
I'm glad you raised the sovereign wealth fund. Talk to us about the prospects of having started that under Trump. Trump has established the sovereign wealth fund, first of its kind. Talk about why that's a good thing and what concerns you about it.
The good thing is that we need the government to start generating value for our free market economy and supercharge it and do it in a way that's not inflationary. If you create a sovereign wealth fund where the government can invest in sectors, maybe not specific companies, but large sectors, or even purchase ETFs, on the market, where the government could actually see a return on investment on these dollars that they're spending that's tangible and realistic and actually set market goals, that's large and impactful. So if you take a look at some of the expenses that we have that we can't do anything about, and I'm talking of our national deficit and our budget, Social Security and Medicare are the biggest chunk of it. And if we don't do anything to help offset that more than we're already doing, it's going to be a problem. And cutting it isn't really possible either. That's, we can't leave our elderly out on the streets, right? We have to take
Right.
care of the standard that we set for them, and the taxes aren't covering it. So creating a sovereign wealth fund where we can actually invest this money in the market, compete against China in the AI space, and get tangible returns on our investment as a country, we're going to see the first time in US history where we actually have the government generating value for the country rather than just taxing it and stealing that value from our citizens.
It'll be so interesting to see if DOGE is going to be able to implement AI as a way to kind of automatically monitor efficiency in the future. I know that gets into a whole slippery slope. Then we're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about all kinds of other issues. But it would be interesting to see if AI does become meshed in this effort to create efficiency in the government.
Yeah, as long as they don't do it in the IRS, then I'm happy. They're like artificially going through people's bank records and like getting really specific. That's going to be kind of scary. But if they can use AI to identify waste and start helping and start really helping out, save the country money, figuring out the best answers and eliminating tons of bureaucratic, redundant positions, that could be really helpful for the whole country. Absolutely.
Well, going back to the summit real quick, the questions that they're raising are, some of it's based off of this report that was put out, and that report raised such issues as biological attacks that might be waged by AI. Is that a real thing, or is that something that's a little more on the futuristic end of thinking?
No, it's not at all futuristic. I mean, it's where we are today, right? If you've trained an AI to pursue the Chinese Communist Party's values, to tell, that AI believes wholeheartedly that Taiwan belongs to China, that the US has no right to its market position in the world, right? And you've trained this AI to think like this, and then that AI is training other things and developing new technologies. Yeah, it's pretty scary. I mean, we've seen what happened with COVID and its origins and potential ties to the Chinese party out there. What happens when AI that is very politically and radically motivated gets a hold of some of those technologies and, determines that the best case scenario for China is to unleash another plague that targets America? I mean, I'm not saying, it's pretty crazy, but it's not exactly outside of today's technology or reach. So it is something that we need to compete against.
And the other scary topic that involves AI and biology is this idea that AI has been able to design viruses that were completely immune from treatment, just design brand new viruses at scales that were considered impossible in the hands of a human being.
Mm-hmm. Entirely possible. I also don't want to downplay the good side of that too, because it can also, in theory, help you come up with solutions to potential viruses that we don't yet know about as well. So it's not all negative when those things happen. It is negative, however, if the AI has bad intentions or if the people using the tool, the humans in charge of that tool, have bad intentions with it.
Right.
And so, if they have good intentions and we're merely doing research and we're able to, cure future diseases we don't even know of yet, that's amazing. And that technology should absolutely be incentivized. But if it's not and is weaponized, then we have a serious problem. And how much do you trust China with being the moral police on that issue?
Or how much do you trust someone like Larry Ellison, who was out there talking roughly about this? And it sounded good in theory, but then people question who actually is running the program. And if it's people you don't trust, then it becomes a little more suspect. So no, you're right. There is an upside to AI getting involved in the medical space, but it all goes back to who controls it.
Yeah, and I actually don't think it's who do you necessarily trust. I think it's how do we create it in a way that's so transparent that there's no such thing as that one benevolent guy that we have in charge of the whole thing. That is scary too, because what happens when they turn out not to be benevolent?
Right, and I think that Elon Musk with X has shown that rather than hiring a whole team of disinformation and misinformation monitors, you crowdsource truth and you let people come together with community notes. So I think that's a great answer to that question. Well, what other things are you watching out for before we go at this AI summit? What are you most excited about its end result?
Well, I'm waiting for, and I'm positioned well for whatever announcements they have in the crypto space. I still think, and I know Trump has been working with a lot of people in the crypto space to announce the idea of a national Bitcoin or cryptocurrency reserve. I think there's going to be some movements at some point in that space, and maybe it will even come up at the summit. I'm not sure that it actually will, because I'm waiting for the moment when all the stars are aligned and Trump's organization and Truth Social and all of these companies have their crypto exchanges launched and they feel like they're well positioned for new legislation. Then I anticipate the president coming out and really saying, we need to do the national Bitcoin reserve and actually making an impact on that community. He's promised a lot of people in that space something, and I'm sure something's going to happen.
Where do you think J.D. Vance stands on that, given his background in technology and finance?
Well, we've seen some pictures or rumors that people within the administration had been meeting with MicroStrategies, which is a publicly traded company that is essentially like leveraged Bitcoin, if you will. They're selling bonds at 0% rates to increase their Bitcoin reserves, and they're a publicly traded fund or a company. And so, when you have people within the administration having conversations publicly with those individuals, you might think that there's going to be something happening in that space,
Who are the top thinkers inside the Trump administration, or the top allies when it comes to crypto inside Trump White House?
I actually don't see really any major enemies that are impactful at this point in time. I mean, I wouldn't know exactly, but I would see Vance as an ally. I would see Trump himself as an ally. If you take a look at his business interests as well as his public opinions that he's had, they all align with being very Bitcoin friendly. If you take a look at the Bitcoin community, they're very optimistic about Trump. They're spending a lot of money. They were spending a lot of money on his campaign, press releases, helping him out with events. So I think you're going to see a lot of change for the benefit of cryptocurrencies in that space.
Well, it's certainly a change in tune from the Janet Yellen days under Biden, where she was promoting a centralized cryptocurrency and all this other stuff that just completely obviated what crypto was supposed to be. So I think in that regard, it's a very pro-crypto administration. John Mates, a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
How do the American people feel about the Trump administration so far? Which polls can we trust at this point? Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen joins us right after this.